How's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 162, and it was recorded in Nashville, Tennessee last year with Chris Watts. Chris came over to the house, and we chatted about all sorts of things. A lot of what was going on at the time in the news, a lot about Katrina, because he was serving in the National Guard at the time that Katrina hit, and he was in New Orleans. And we talked about the fact that he was given an option when he was younger about going to the military or going to jail, and he chose the military. So what's interesting about that is I've heard other stories of people that have been given that opportunity to choose jail or military. But the Army's official stance is this. Waiver is not authorized if a criminal or juvenile court charge is pending, or if such a charge was dismissed or dropped at any stage of the court proceedings on condition that the offender enlist in a military service. So that's the official statement from the Army. But as I was doing the research on it, I found a ton of people saying, oh yeah, I was given the choice. You either go to jail or you go into the military. Now, these were not felony offenders from what I could tell. And this was, charges were dropped and they went into the military as they agreed. So it's very interesting that that was the case. And I don't know if you recall that when I did a episode with Harlan Peace, who teaches at the prison system there in Nashville, that he talked about a judge that I think it was, I'm trying to recall now, something about the judge said you can either go do this jail time or you can write an essay and turn that in. I think that's what it was. Go back and listen. I'm going to. That was the Harlan Peace episode. So I think it does happen, even if the military says it doesn't. But the thing is also is that the military does a very thorough background check, I think. I might be making that up, on people that enlist. I don't know. It's a thin line. I remember when my best friend in college dated a guy in the Army, and some of his friends in the Army had some questionable character traits. And I asked Sean, what's going on there? And he said, oh, well, they were basically, it was either go to jail or go into the Army, and they chose the Army. So we know what happens. I don't know. Official statements be damned, right? Anyway, it was a really interesting conversation, and I hope you dig it as much as I did. Usual stuff, heyhumanpodcast.com. The links page is very full for this episode. We talk about so many different things, so it's really chock full of information, books, movies, articles, blah, blah, blah. It's all on there, so definitely check that out. Also on the heyhumanpodcast.com site, you'll find the Amazon portal. This is an ad-free podcast. I'd like to keep it that way, and so your support really helps. If you shop Amazon, please go through the Amazon portal on the Hey Human Podcast website, and that helps support Hey Human. Also, go on iTunes, rate and review the show. That is super helpful. It gets other people interested in the show, and also it helps the algorithm. So take a minute and do that, and I would be very, very thankful. I am thankful anyway, but it would be very cool if you did that. You can reach me at Susan at heyhumanpodcast.com. SusanRuth.com is my main website. I'm on social media under Hey Human Podcast, and that's on Facebook and Instagram. And I try and really keep the Instagram one interesting. I put information about people in history on that one, along with the posters for the show. So you get a little bit of education in there, or historical stuff. I don't know. I think it's cool. Maybe you will too. I think that's about it. Let's get into this. Thanks for listening, everybody. Here we go. Chris Watts, welcome to Hey Human.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I think right off the bat, it's really important to mention you are not the Chris Watts who murdered his family.
I got a lot of messages about that in the middle of the night. I woke up the next day and people were like, what's going on? What? Is there something you're not telling me?
Because you have a family. Do you have children?
I do not. Okay. No, I just have a wife.
And she's still very much alive.
She's alive, yeah.
That's just crazy.
For the record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually a Twitter feed that's pretty interesting where the people who have the names of notorious folks throughout history.
Really?
Yeah, and they all talk to each other on this one particular feed.
I should be up there.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. Anyway, you are not he.
No, I'm not. I thought we were going to hear the cool intro music too.
You will when you hear the
good.
Actual recording. Yeah. Oh no, it doesn't get played live.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was kind of hoping just for...
I could play it for you if you want to.
That's all right.
NPR, this is not.
That's all right.
Doodle-doo-doo.
I listened to it for you don't know this, but I sat out in my truck for just an hour and just listened to the
intro music to get into it. Yeah, I wrote that with my friend Brad Callahan. And I should say I am the loosely writer of it. I would say he wrote it and I was in the room.
So it's a co-write.
It is a co-write. And it's
very Nashville of you.
Yeah, he's lovely. And it was from when we were in Nashville. We did a bunch of bumpers together. And so, yeah, shout out Brad Callahan. He's awesome. I love him dearly. And he lives in Minnesota with his wife, Jo. So anyway, Chris, welcome.
It's good to be here.
Everyone's like, okay, so what is this about? You and I have known each other for a hot minute. I was trying to remember where we
met on an airplane going to Key West.
Okay, so that would have been...
For the songwriters.
How long ago would that have been then?
I don't know.
And was I sober at the moment? Was anyone?
I don't know. You offered me a breath mint.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was I being rude?
No, I figured, anytime somebody offers you a piece of gum or a breath mint,
you should take it.
Yeah,
maybe. Although I'm definitely a kind of personality that if I thought your breath was off-putting, I would probably say, hey, you might want to do this. Isn't that funny? There are certain things that are considered off limits to talk about, and yet I've known people in my lifetime whose breath have been clearly something is wrong with them internally.
It's like a medical thing.
Yeah, and they have no idea maybe, or maybe they do, and it's like this weird shame around it when in fact it could be tooth decay, or maybe they have postnasal drip, or there may be something wrong in their stomach, or who knows what. And like the cancer dogs that can sniff cancer on people.
And dogs too, they get gum disease or whatever, and the only way is from
the breath.
Dog
breath. Woof.
Yeah.
Puppy breath is perfect though.
Yeah, it is.
I love puppy breath. And puppy feet smells like Fritos.
Sometimes.
I think that's why I like Fritos so much, is because it reminds me of puppy feet.
I could see that. We have a puppy.
You do?
Yeah, he's a rescue dog.
Yay.
His name's Cooley. He's about to be 2 years old in a month. He's part Chihuahua and part Jack Russell Terrier.
Yes, that's what Mikey was.
Really?
Mikey was Chihuahua, Jack Russell, and Dachshund, and he was a perfect gentleman. He was not a spazzy dog at all.
Yeah, Cooley is so well behaved, chill. Mm-hmm. He
Dogs
jumps
take
sometimes.
after their people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was 5 months old when we got him. And I knew my wife had never had a pet before, ever. And so I wanted to get her, I knew she wanted a puppy. And I went to the Humane Society, and there was only 2 puppies. It's all, it's a lot of older dogs. And there was him, and there was a part hound, part lab. And so I went with him because he was...
They're smart too. Those are some smart dogs.
He's really smart. Yeah. He can escape. We board him sometimes at the vet, and he knows how to escape. They put him in a bigger cage, and he escaped. So
really,
they have to be on that when we bring him. We have to padlock his kennel too.
Serious? He's a smart dog.
He can open our front door.
When I was little, we had a dog named Mouse. We had Mouse and Bear. And Mouse was a Brittany Spaniel Chihuahua mix. Bear was Black Lab Golden Retriever. And she was huge, and he was small. And he was so smart, and she was just a big dumb dog. Lovey, big dumb dog.
Yeah.
And he would manipulate her to do his bidding. It was so funny. He'd get her to knock stuff off of the table. He'd get her to dig holes in the yard so he could get out. It was really interesting.
Dogs are a lot smarter than...
People? No.
People
Sometimes. I like them a lot better in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Dogs make the best people.
But yeah, so we were we were on a plane going to Key West, and I go every year.
I didn't go last year.
I don't fly every year, but I go every year.
Yeah.
That would have been...
It's a long drive.
Usually, when I drive, I'll make like a tour out of it on the way there and back.
Yeah. So Katrina, so you were in New Orleans when that happened.
I was.
How old were you?
I was 23 or 22 rather, and I'm from Louisiana originally. I was living in New Orleans when it happened. I was going to the University of New Orleans. I was going to film school down there, and I was in the National Guard.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I got in some trouble when I was younger, and it just made sense. Yeah.
Okay. That happens.
But no, I'd gotten some trouble, and that seemed to be a good way out of it.
Can you say what your trouble was?
Yeah, I got arrested a few times, and one of them was a felony. It was battery on a police officer.
Whoops.
Yeah, and I had a couple of other like drinking and just underage drinking and like a lot of like fighting stuff, and it all just kind of happened at once. And the DA was basically like, have you thought about joining? Because if you don't, like, you're probably going to do some
worse things.
A little bit of time.
Oh yeah, that happens. I don't think people necessarily realize that has been an option for a lot of people. That especially younger people, where they say, here are your options: prison or military.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't necessarily agree with the moral. It helped me out, so I don't...
It helped straighten you out, you mean?
It helped me out.
Yeah.
It helped straighten me out. But it got me, I was in college and like had full paid scholarships and like lost all those. First semester. Second semester I was on like probation or whatever. And I didn't care. I didn't want to be in college. I was going through just a weird, rough spell. And
was that because you were away from home for the first time, or was there?
No, I was. I mean, actually, yeah. That probably had like a little bit to do with it. I had like a high school girlfriend, that was. We had dated for probably like 3 years, and we broke up. That might have been part of it. I don't know. I was like 18.
Sure.
But I was getting into trouble, and so I joined. I signed up, and when I got out of basic and AIT, I wanted to go to film school, and so I moved to New Orleans, and I was there in film school for 2 years, and then Katrina happened in 2005. And I remember we were the only National Guard unit that was still in the state because everybody else was in Iraq or Afghanistan at the time. So we had like a meeting, and they issued us these pagers. And if you get the call on the page, that's when you have to go go down to New Orleans, or at the time report to your base and get orders. But so we were the first responders for Hurricane Katrina. And every year they open the Superdome, like where the Saints play football. They open that for evacuation. That's like a official evacuation spot that the government oversees, the National Guard oversees. And so we knew that we were to report there on this was on like a Saturday. Sunday is when they opened it up to the public, and then Monday is when the hurricane hit. So there was like 5,000 to 6,000 people in there at the time, which is like totally normal and what we were prepared for with supplies and whatnot. And the hurricane hit, and then Tuesday is when the levees broke. And so what a lot of people don't understand is that nobody had any access to like media or TV or newspapers or anything. Like while we're in there, we don't know what's going on. We're just as clueless as the citizens.
They're not reporting back to you and letting you know?
No. And so the levees break, and then the whole town starts to flood, and then people start coming in from all over the place, and it goes to like 25,000 people, from 5,000 to 25, and the hurricane's already passed, and everybody knows that because we were in there, and it blew like the roof off the Superdome. So we knew it had passed, and people didn't know why they couldn't go home, and we didn't know either.
You didn't know the whole town had flooded?
No, but the whole town started to flood, and people started coming in, and it got pretty intense pretty quick. And
how do you mean?
Well, just with all the people coming in, and we weren't prepared for it. There was still there was 250 of us in our unit. At the time, still when all these other people started coming in, it was still just us. And I think there was 2 doctors and some military police, but it was just us to deal with 25,000 people that we don't have supplies for all of a sudden. And so people who come there they're scared, and they don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on. They look to the National Guard for some sort of guidance or comfort at least, and they can tell that we don't know what's going on either. So I think that made things a little more chaotic.
Why do you think that people, the higher ups, didn't inform you, the National Guard, who was there to try and maintain order and keep people safe and calm?
I think it was because there was just an epic
fail.
Yeah, just on all levels of so we would have formation in the mornings, and we would work in 12-hour shifts, and we would sleep for 6. So we would go in patrol for 12, and then you sleep for 6, and then get up and in our formations they told us nothing, just go out and patrol and try to keep people from...
Patrol within the dome or patrol
within
out?
the dome. This is all within the dome.
So crazy, yeah.
Patrol within the dome, and so a big part of it was people who were coming in had to be searched, and we had this big long list of items that we were to confiscate, and it things like nail clippers and stuff like that, very really just trivial things.
In case there was an insane manicurist.
Yeah. You never can be too careful.
They've been huffing all that acetate all those years.
Yeah. but so we, of course there's the threat of people bringing firearms in.
Sure.
Which you do have to look out for, but so everybody coming into the Superdome had to have everything they brought with them, which in most people's cases was everything they could possibly bring and fit, and for some people everything they own. All that had to be searched through. It wasn't just a pat down you're going through a concert. All bags had to be emptied, and so this was a lot of we had to do that, and it's the hottest day of the year, and it's in Louisiana in the summertime, and there's hundreds and probably thousands and tens of thousands of people standing in line waiting to get in. And so here's something that a lot of people don't know. At some point they decided that for lawsuit purposes that males should only search males and females should only search females. Okay. Well, so the line of people coming into the Superdome, when you walked in, if you were a male, you went here. If you were a female, you went here. And they would pat you down. Well, somebody decided that they said, well, we should make 2 lines, a male line and a female line, one going into like the bottom of the Superdome where people were coming in, and a new line like going to the very top, like up a bunch of stairs outside. So like if me and you show up together and we have a kid, you get there and it's, you know, ma'am, you're going to have to go to this line. Sir, you're going to have to go to this line.
So they were separating families.
Figure out where the kid... Yeah, exactly. And that was happening before people ever even got in there. And so add that to, you know, the already...
The level of panic must have gone up a lot.
Totally. And then once you walk, you know, there might be 2,000 people in line in front of you, and there might be 5,000 people in front of me. And so, like, we're never going to see each other again, because when you walk in, you can't have 10,000 people standing there. So they're shuffled into the mix. And it was... That added to the chaos a lot, for sure.
And the kids must have been terrified.
Yeah. I mean, you had to deal with. Senior citizens, people with medical. I mean, you that was all... that was all a thing that we had to deal with. And a couple of days into it, they issued us our M16s. Now, when that happens, you have to be ordered to load a chamber into the round of your gun. Like, you're walking around with them, but they're not loaded, essentially, like until you're ordered to. And it never got to that point, like when I was there. But like, so this was let's see, the hurricane hit on Monday. Tuesday is when the levees broke, and so late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, me and some soldiers and I had just gotten off patrol, and we heard that there was like a restroom that had running water, because none of the restroom, you know, like the plumbing was out, the power was out.
God, with all those people, I can't imagine what it smelled like.
I'll never forget the smell. It was awful.
And I'm sure people died in there. I mean, you can't have, just by statistics, regardless of whether or not things were taken to the letter,
right.
When you have that many people, statistically, people will die.
Well, the day of the night that I'm about to tell you about, I was on crowd control duty, like outside, dealing with like the lines of people trying to come in, and I told you about the just, you know, it's the hottest day of the year. Everything has to be searched, so there's thousands of people in line, and people were dying, like in the line, elderly, kids, and you just had to load them up, and like, what do you do?
How do you deal with that? Did you suffer any repercussions emotionally from that experience?
I don't think so. I kind of looked at it as I'm doing a job, you know, like I'm doing my job, and as a human, you have all these people coming up to you with, you know, this person's medical emergency is more important than this person's, and, you know, these people's kids and this and that, and you have to just sit there and do your best to sort of let everybody know that, like, we're all in this together. I know it looks like we might be eating like steak dinners upstairs or whatever, but we're not. And, you know, you just have to do your best to, like, be a good person. And, you know, if there's some waters or MREs lying around, go grab them and give them to people. I don't know.
An MRE, for those of you that don't know, it's a meal ration. It's those little kits that military and astronauts and things
right
use. Or
yeah.
Campers know what they are.
Yeah.
So the night or the day of the...
Right. So that night, we were in search of water, and a soldier went into this. It was a locker room behind one of the end zones coming out of the football field, and he went in, and there was a civilian hiding out in there, and there wasn't supposed to be any civilians in that particular part. It was blocked off. And it was pitch black. You can't see anything at all. And he jumped out at the soldier, and I could tell there was like a commotion. I could hear him in there. So I ran inside, and I could see just enough to tell they were fighting over his M16. The guy was trying to take the weapon away from him. And I just started, it was a hallway, and they were at the end of the hall, and I was at the other end, and I just started running towards them, and eventually they fell, and like I said, we were not like locked and loaded, but somehow like a round got chambered, and it went off, and it hit me in the leg, and I just remember like pitch dark, and I just remember like a flash. And then I didn't feel anything, but I remember thinking like, I've been shot. And then my leg immediately just like gave out, and I fell into the nasty like sewage water because the bottom of the Superdome had already flooded. And then I remember somebody pulling me out and saying, hold on, we're going to go get help. And I'm pretty realistic, and I knew that we were the only ones still in the Superdome at the time, just about. And so I just kind of laid there, and I could see the ground like through the hole in my leg. It went in and out.
You're lucky you didn't hit the femoral artery.
Totally, because it went like an inch away from it.
Jeez.
But they drug me out, and I was with a bunch of special needs people that were all kind of posted up right there, and so I just sat there and waited, and it's kind of like, hey.
Did someone line up to give you blood? How did they? Was it a clean shot?
It went in through and through. It didn't hit bone or anything like that.
You're so lucky.
I was.
Which is a weird thing to say to someone who's just been shot.
No, but I totally was. And honestly...
Did they apprehend the person that shot you?
They did eventually. But the very first thing that went through my mind at the time was like, yes, I'm out of here. Like the Superdome. Because it was so...
awful.
I didn't even think about like what maybe could happen health-wise. I just thought, this is awful, and this is probably going to get me out of it. And so people came, some Air Force people came. And by the way, I didn't shoot myself to get out of the Superdome. It wasn't that bad. That was actually reported, though, in a news story. Yeah,
of course.
There was all kinds of like...
Were you the only shot
I was
person?
the only casualty, yeah. But so some Air Force people, Air National Guard people picked me up, and I didn't feel it until then. Like when I'd been laying there for probably about 45 minutes, and then when they picked me up, that's when I felt it.
Well, I imagine your adrenaline was probably keeping you from...
Yeah, I was. I guess I was just in shock.
Yeah.
But
it's the body's way of protecting you.
Yeah. It just felt like I don't know, like it was like a constant burn, like somebody just putting a cigar out on your leg, but times like 10,000.
How long did it take to recover from that?
It took a couple of months.
I'll pour you some more of this wine you brought.
Sure.
Thank you for bringing wine.
No problem.
That was really nice.
But they were so I was helivac to Baton Rouge, and they say, I don't remember. I was on like a lot of morphine and other stuff, but apparently when I got there, I called my mom and was like, "Hey, don't worry, but I've been shot. Just wanted to let you know." So they came down, but it was I was in the hospital for about a week, and then I was on home health care for like 2 months. And eventually I could walk again, and I'm fine now. So
here's a question. If the order doesn't get commanded and then you put in the bullet, is it possible that soldier just happened to be like, screw it, I'm making sure I'm armed?
It's very possible.
Because a bullet doesn't magically get into a chamber having gun experience.
Right. Well, the same soldier, a couple of months later, had an accidental discharge incident, like right around the headquarters when they were still stationed in New Orleans, just a couple of months after this, when, again, they weren't supposed to be like locked and loaded.
Yeah. That's a big red flag right there.
Yeah. And I mean, you have like a lot of these people train once or twice a year, whenever it is you have to qualify. And for some people, that's the only time they ever see or touch a gun.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing photographs during the first Iraq War where there were National Guards people, and on the sides of their trucks it would say things like, 1 week in a month my ass, and we didn't sign up for this. The National Guard means you protect the nation, not other nations. So it's a lot to expect from people that are ill-equipped and ill-prepared.
Yeah, because you
I get the concept, but it's like throwing somebody into a mix that they have no business being in.
In a lot of ways, yes. Everybody goes through the same like basic training, and then you in the Army they call it AIT, where you do your like specified training for whatever your military occupation is. Everybody goes through that, but then if you're in the National Guard, you're doing 1 weekend of drill a month, and then 2 weeks during the summer. And it's been a while, I could be wrong, but I think you just qualify once a year with weapons, with your M16, where you go out and shoot targets. And I think you only qualify once a year for your PT test, like your push-ups and sit-ups and run. So a lot of times people are thrown at, like a lot of people sign up, I feel like, especially in the National Guard, thinking I'm just going to get college out of it, or like I'm going to get some charges dropped.
Sure.
Totally.
Yeah. Sure. I just finished a book that was exceptional. It's called The Last True Story I'll Ever Tell. It's an exceptional book, and it's about a National Guardsman who went off to Iraq, and his story is horrifying. And tour after tour, he just kept getting re-upped, even though they kept telling him, oh no, you're going to go home, and then his company would be automatically re-upped because they needed the bodies, for lack of a better word. Just awful.
I would love to read it.
It's really good. I'll give it to you because somebody gave it to me, so I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I would love to read it.
It's intense.
But yeah, I mean that's a big part of. I feel like, especially like being from the South, that's a big thing for people to go into the military. Maybe just for a way to like pay for college, or to get out of some charges, or maybe they just thought that like my little brother is a Marine, and he went active duty Marines, and he did it because he wanted to. But I feel like there's people that think that, and I think part of his decision too was he just didn't think that he had the grades to go to college, or so I think there's a lot of people who feel like there is no other option. And when you go and speak to these recruiters,
they leave some stuff out.
Yeah.
I've heard that story time and again from various veterans, and yeah, we could go into a whole other conversation about that.
Yeah, I mean it's true. And
I am absolutely 100% behind veterans. This is not a diss against people that make those life choices.
Right.
But I do think that it's extraordinarily unfair that the people that are signing them up
don't want to take care of them when they get back.
Don't want to take care of them when they get back. Don't want to really fill them in on what to expect. I mean, granted, you see things in the news, but a lot of money is spent on the military mystique, on recruitment.
Yeah.
Now you see it. Well, they put money into sports.
It's an investment.
They put it into, you see the movie, you go to the movies, you see the grandiose films. They pay for particular movies to be made. It's all propaganda.
They give money to the NFL.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sporting events is a big one. And I get it. They're recruiting a job like anybody else, but like you said, taking care of people when they come out and really prepping them better when they go in as well, which I'm sure they've gotten better at that over the years. But I have a lot of theories about, first of all, I get very frustrated. I'm pretty vocal about it, that if you're going to give somebody training for 9 weeks on the way in, then you damn well better give them support for 9 weeks on the way out. Give them 100%. Mental health. Give them whatever medical they need. Support them for the rest of their lives. And this is a really dark thought. I have no way to say whether or not it's true, but in my heart of hearts, I hope it's not true that this rate of suicide, 22 a day for the military veterans when they come out of their combat missions, that the power that be, they're like, oh, that's 22 people a day I don't have to care for the rest of their lives, because, when you serve our country, then we are to serve you back and to give you money and funding and medical and like all these things and school. And if people are taking themselves out, it doesn't behoove a government to stop that, does it?
I think
that's such a dark thought, but it certainly has crossed my mind.
That off base, because the federal government's trying to defund the VA out of existence. I feel like President Trump who supposedly loves the troops, but he tried to cut 22% funding from the VA last year. Like, one of the first things he did when he came into office, they would rather those people be in the private sector. But like, if you're dealing with these veterans that have been taken care of pretty much their whole like post-war lives or whatever through the VA, and all of a sudden you just basically like release them out into the wild, so your health insurance buddies can prey upon them, that's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gross. And unfortunately, I think politicians, they have different things that are in their agendas.
Oh, totally. I mean,
humankind is not really the top of their list, I don't think.
It's just a shame that they get used and they get thrown in the middle of it.
The military.
Yeah. And soldiers.
And more especially soldiers that aren't officers, probably the more throwaways.
Well, what happens is it's become like a political tactic. Like, if you want to push through a bill that, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, if you want to push through a bill that isn't going to pass, then you can put stuff some VA funding in there and then say, well,
you tried.
Senator Joe Blow voted against funding your local VA. And both sides do that and do things like similar to that. Mm-hmm. And so the real losers are the soldiers and the veterans.
Right. Yeah.
And you should be taken care of.
I 100% agree with you. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, I'm glad that your leg got better.
Me too.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a heavy topic.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I could talk all night about it. I'm kind of like
yeah, I know.
Pulling back the reins,
yeah. But you don't have to pull back any reins. I mean, people.
Well, how much time do we have?
As much time as you need.
I mean, it's frustrating, and it's this whole. I'm gonna try to keep this not, but this whole just football players kneeling for the flag, and all this taking people's patriotism into question. How can you do that?
It's grossly missing the point. To think that a person kneeling has anything to do with the flag is insane to me. But for me, they're kneeling because they're not being represented, because they're speaking out against the mishandling of their humanity.
Right.
But it spins much better to put it under a patriotic hat. And if you have that much respect for the flag, then stop wearing your flag t-shirt and your flag hat and your flag blankets. Example is this, I just read about this, and people are going to believe in whatever they want to believe, firstly. But on one side, don't be up in arms about what you think is a disrespect of the flag and then grossly disrespect it by doing all the things that are actually written into what the rules and regulations for a flag are, including don't wear it, don't let it touch the ground, certainly don't make a blankie out of it, Or
swimming trunks.
Or whatever. So, but...
Or Budweiser bottles.
Yeah. The argument, of course, it's a moot point, unfortunately, because people are going to be for whatever they're for, and logic doesn't really matter.
No... you can't even have those conversations anymore.
I know.
It's just defeating the other side. Like that's all. There was never like this all-knowing beacon of truth that you could say like, well, like people are always going to disagree whether you're Republican or Democrat or whatever. People are always going to disagree, but you used to be able to have these. You used to be able to talk about it and debate it, and you might not convince somebody else that you're right or wrong, but you're both going to walk off better for having that interaction.
Well, I just really like to hear from somebody why they are so offended by the kneeling and why they're not okay with that, but they are okay with wearing the flag.
Right. Yeah, and
it's sort of that cake and eat it too thing that human beings are so good at.
Well, it's because they're told by the emperor what to think.
But the emperor's not wearing any clothes. Don't they know?
Oh,
that's such a great fairy tale. I highly recommend reading that to anyone that hasn't read it.
Well, it's to me, it's people that you don't. So like going back to the social media stuff that we were talking about. There is no more news. Right. There is no more there's no more nothing. There's no you can't.
It's a circus of opinion.
You can't have these debates anymore because then the source comes into question.
And all of us we are all like everything I just said is through my lens.
Right.
And I could be wrong as well, but I don't know. For me, I'm like, let people have their voice. If they're not hurting anyone, does it hurt anyone that Colin takes a knee? Of course not. It doesn't hurt anyone. No. And he's voicing his right to say, hey, I think this is not okay. He does it quietly. He doesn't do it quietly anymore. He did it quietly, and then someone caught news of it and decided to make it very loud. He was doing that, as were a couple other people, for maybe a year or two before the news cycle got hold of it. Where was the outcry then? Nobody cared because it wasn't a story.
The news cycle now is, and I was in journalism very briefly. I graduated with, I have a journalism degree and a political science degree.
Cool.
And I moved to D.C. When I was still in college, actually, to write for a political magazine for the National Journal. And I didn't like D.C. and I hated it so much that they actually offered me a full-time job when my internship was over, and I declined and I went back to Louisiana, and I vowed to stay as far away from both politics and journalism as humanly possible.
Why did you hate D.C.?
Just the people mostly. I mean, it's a really cool city with a lot to do, but just the culture. I wasn't. If you want to be a journalist, that's your lifestyle. That it's what I thought I wanted to do when I was young, and but it made me realize that it's really not what I wanted to do. That I'd better figure out a way to make music work. Because that's not going to work. But just the whole nobody is interested in you unless you can somehow like help them out, and the whole like just network. I don't know. It just wasn't. Your vibe. Yeah, it wasn't for me.
Yeah. So you mentioned that your brother's a Marine, and the Marines just had a birthday.
They did, yeah.
Do you and he share the same politics or no?
Not really.
Is that an issue for you?
No. We don't talk about it a whole lot, but we grew up in a very like conservative Christian household, as a lot of people do in the South, and I feel like the first thing that I really had issues with growing up was religion, and I feel like from a young age I just had a lot of questions that never got answered, or answered to my liking. But as far as politics go, like I remember growing up and my dad yelling at the news every night, and you sort of become indoctrinated as a child growing up around something like that. And so I was politically like very conservative when I first started to like sort of, I guess, develop my own opinions on what politics should be, because it was that whole like personal responsibility, work hard, because I did work hard, and that's how I was raised. And so I feel like the older I got, the more things I started questioning, and then I was like dwelled in like libertarianism for a while, because I felt like, okay, this isn't too extreme, but like I do agree that what like people should be like, women should be able to make their own decisions about what they do with their body, and the government shouldn't be able to say what happens. But I don't know, like I tell people I'm sort of like a recovering libertarian now, and have been for a while, but it was just enough without having to stray too far from what you've always known. And I don't know, I just started like getting out into the world and traveling and living life, and you start to see how things are. And I've got friends, like all my best friends back home who probably will even listen to this. Like they're very still like hardcore conservative.
Please ask one of them to be on the show, because I honestly would love to sit down and have a conversation with someone who is super duper conservative, because I want to know why. Not to mock them or judge them.
What do you want to know?
Just how they develop their feelings about things, what shaped them, and why they think, and to have an open conversation about something like the flag or the military or the president even. I learn about myself through other people, and if I am always around people that think exactly how I think, I'm never going to learn anything. So I really enjoy the discourse that I have with people that are completely different than me.
Right.
And I think it's important.
I feel like right now, though, more than ever, people are like doubling down on...
Just for the sake of it?
Just for the sake of it, yeah.
I see that too.
Because people are threatened by this non-existent, like people think that their way of life is in question, and it's in jeopardy, and it's going away, and it's totally...
People have spent a lot of money to make them feel that way.
Right. And it's totally not like there's not. People are doubling down now on whatever it is they thought they may believe. Now it's like you're all in 100%. F you, libtards or Nazis or whatever.
Sure, I've been called libtard a lot by some people that I really love. It's a shame.
Yeah, I had
whenever an argument degenerates into name calling, it's not worth the conversation anymore, because nothing is being accomplished. But I think we all can agree that puppy videos are cute.
I think my puppy and pictures and videos of him are cute.
Sometimes I just watch animal videos and And I feel so much better.
Well, there's because there's no like safe havens anymore. That's like one of your only escapes now. There's two types of journalism, like pro-Trump or anti-Trump, and that's all it is. And now it's social media and like micro-targeting ads and all this. Like it's caused this. We're definitely in a new.
It's very North Korea, really. I feel like.
Yeah, totally. But I mean,
what I mean by that is it's very propagandist. Regardless of which direction you look,
exactly,
we are overwhelmed with propaganda.
So when the truth starts to erode because sources start to become in question. Like, what do you have left?
Yeah, but I don't know that the truth is so important anymore either.
That's what I'm saying.
Which is weird. This cult of personality has... Yeah, you've seen that. I bring this up all the time, too. The movie Idiocracy. Such a fantastic...
Best documentary ever made.
It's such a good movie. And you watch that and you think, that's just impossible. And then you start looking around and you're like, oh, wait. He was actually... some sort of a soothsayer.
Yeah. Used to at least be able to like cite the New York Times or the Washington Post.
You can't cite anything anymore.
You can't cite anything anymore.
Even stuff as dumb, like I posted during the fires that is going on in LA. I saw this thing. It seemed super legit. It said something to the fact of, bring your animals inside, and if wild animals are going through the yard, don't bother them. No, that makes just perfect sense anyway, but then it also said, put water out for them or food or whatever. And then it got snoped and said, like, do not do that. That's a really bad idea. They're going to fend for themselves. Let them do what they do. Don't get involved with the wild animals kind of thing. I was like, oh, actually, that makes way more sense. And I'm like, why didn't all I was thinking was, animals. And I just posted it. Right. So I'm part of the problem, too. I've had to take down things that I later learned were erroneous, but I'm okay with being wrong, which it happens.
Well, that's the problem is because you immediately become part of it. Mm-hmm. As soon as you...
Without even meaning to sometimes.
Without meaning to.
Yeah.
And that's the whole, like...
Everybody's road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Everybody's a part of it.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, and I know that everyone's like, oh, the extreme left and the extreme right and the libtards and the conservative assholes and la 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 la. And it's just like, okay, stop, everybody. Stop for 5 minutes.
I don't know if...
And there's tons of great, good news out there, but we're not looking at that. We're only looking at this garbage material, You should be aware of what's going on in your world, granted.
The news, which is controlled by advertising dollars, like it's no longer... people bringing their editors these stories and they're deciding like whether or not is this newsworthy.
Right.
Now it's just like you have to sell fear and crises and so like my dad, he's a big like Fox News guy, and so when I go home, he comes home from work and he sits down and he watches Fox News. And he starts yelling, and then it turns into hours of him yelling with people he agrees with, but he's stirred up. And I told him, I think last time I was home, I was like, Dad, this isn't good for you. Like you're living in anger, and it's addictive.
It is addictive. It's releasing dopamine. Absolutely. My mom's the same, only for her it's CNN, and she's screaming and yelling.
Yeah, because they tell you like, look what the dumb libtards are doing now, or look what the
Satan.
Satan
like Republicans.
They show you what.
Although there are, let's be honest, there's some shit going down that is horrifying. That is truthful. There is some horrible stuff going on.
There is a lot of horrible stuff, but that horrible stuff I feel like doesn't get talked about as much as the like fabricated horrible stuff.
Right, the sensationalism.
Yeah, so they don't, and that's the thing with like these, especially Fox News. Like it's not what they cover; it's like what they don't cover. That's like the scary thing to me.
A lie by omission is still a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny growing up because my dad, a scientist guy, and I would say, "Hey, Dad, we learned about this, that, or the other today," or "Oh, I read this," and I still do that. We'd talk about things. And one thing I learned from him a long, long time ago is when I read a scientific study, you go back and see who paid for it. Who paid for the study? The study that says bacon is awesome, who paid for that? Well, probably bacon people, or...
Pig farmer Association
or
lobbyists.
Cigarettes are awesome. That was like a big thing. Who paid for all those tests? R.J. Reynolds back in the day.
Right.
Which drug is the best new perfect drug? Well, go backwards and see who paid for it. It's no different in politics or in news. Somebody owns that.
Yeah, it's
and their agenda is coming forth.
Yeah, it's all advertising dollars at work, and it's all. It's really just time for the AI to take over.
I think they are already. It would be interesting to see how things might shift just a little if, when people read a story, if they just did 5 more minutes of research and did a deeper dive. Because we are such a clickbait culture.
I would like to know the percentage of people that even actually click and read.
They probably don't.
As opposed to just see the headline.
I think there's statistics on that for sure.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
But
it's a fascinating study of humanity for sure. And you got to you have to sort of step outside of it for a minute and just go, we're all so ridiculous, and see that part of it. Otherwise we become like your dad and my mom. Lunatics screaming at a television. If there are aliens, I could see why they'd be fascinated with us, because our emotional fever pitches, or if aliens really exist and if they are lacking an emotion, which is sort of the cliche, right?
Right.
Then, I mean, it would be like watching the greatest reality TV show ever, to watch humans just go insane constantly over the dumbest stuff.
You
stole my parking spot. You cut me off in traffic. People shoot people for that. It's like, where do you go in your head that you think the appropriate response for somebody being a jerk on the road is to shoot them? It's just like, whoa.
We're all a bunch of big babies.
I mean, and it's horrifying, but it is like your response is to laugh. My response is to laugh, because it's like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, I mean, laughter is probably the best response you can have. That's all you can do.
Yeah, I had that in affect change. Yes.
Well, yeah. Laugh and affect change. No,
do you believe in aliens? Because I know that when we were...
100%.
You do.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a UFO?
I've seen what I believe to be a UFO.
What'd you see?
I was driving from my hometown to my college town when I was a teenager, and it's about an hour, just straight interstate, and it was pretty much pitch black. And I was driving, and all of a sudden the entire sky lit up, and there was like 3 little green lights, and they just fell really fast, and then before they hit like the horizon, they just like took off. And it happened so quick that I had to pull over, and it took a second to like process what went on. But I had some friends that worked at the Air Force Base, and they said like they got tons of calls that night, like a bunch of people saw it, and they were like it was just some satellites or whatever falling from space, but like satellites don't do that. Nothing does that we know of that falls from space. And it, like, that might just be what I made up in my head, but I'm 100% like, that's what I saw, and I'd never seen anything like it, and I've never seen anything like it since. And like I said, I was not the only one to see it, because a bunch of people like called in to the Air Force Base and reported it, and they were just like, oh, we'll investigate it.
I had a UFO researcher on the show right in my first year of doing the show, and I wish I could remember which number episode it was. Really cool guy, retired meteorologist, and he goes around everywhere collecting these stories of UFO sightings, and then he compares it with the weather data, and then tries to prove or disprove. William Puckett is his name. Fascinating guy. Fascinating conversation that we had. Yeah.
I'll look into that for sure. But yeah, I definitely believe 100%. Part of me wishes they would just come and go ahead and destroy the earth and get it over with. But no,
So you think they're evil, malevolent, destroy the earth, you say?
I don't know if destroying the earth would necessarily even be considered evil.
That's a really valid point.
In the grand scheme of things.
That's a good point. Hilarious.
We're like, like just mold on a old sandwich. That's how I feel sometimes.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think we are certainly what's the word? Like the parasites on the bottom.
I was going to say
we're a little parasitic.
Bacteria or parasitic.
Yeah, it sounds terrible to say because I find people fascinating, but we got some issues.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the issues are some of them are really easy to solve. Some of them aren't. Some of them are really complex. But it's like we don't. I feel like we just keep putting more and more Band-Aids on these wounds that we'll never get to the root of these like complex issues because we don't even want to address them, and we're like going further and further away from that. And it's a shame, and I hope I'm wrong, but I do, like I said, I do see people that all over the country who, you know, like we do have a lot more in common, and at the end of the day, I hate that phrase, and I just used it.
My best friend Ellen right now just started laughing because she hates that phrase so much.
I hate that phrase, but at the end of the day, most people want the same things, you know, like they just want to lead.
We all require the same things: food, water, air, love, touch, you know. Yeah,
and but I mean, like Trump likes to say, who knows? We'll see. I don't know. It's like, but these complex...
That was the worst Trump impersonation I've ever heard.
I wasn't even really trying to impersonate him. I know you weren't.
I was just kidding you.
But, you know, there are complex issues that we don't really even begin to address, that it's easier, you know, like racism and stuff like that. There's no... It's hard to say because you see progress and then it's like one step forward, two steps back kind of thing.
You were born here in the South, not here, but not in Nashville, Tennessee.
No, I was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and
how does that shape? So we've been talking about military and politics a little bit, and how people view the world, and how does being Southern shape that?
There's this like whole just duality. I feel like that goes along with it with being Southern, because you don't. I was never like I never considered myself to be like a proud Southerner until I moved away, and when I moved to Washington D.C. And then I realized that like people were very, you know, I didn't realize that people still viewed the South as being
less than,
sort of like illiterate and racist and poor.
Yeah.
And that's how I was treated by a lot of people.
They hear the accent and they immediately
in
shave
DC. Yeah,
IQ points off of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a shame. It's no better than. And I think that's where the rhetoric of elitist comes from, because when someone treats you less than based on where you're from.
That's why a lot of these people are disenfranchised in the first place. But yeah, there's totally a cultural elitism that goes along with. And I know DC is like a special place, but it's all over. And for me, I feel like the South that I know. I can at least say that the South I know is the only place I've ever been in the country that's truly integrated. I can go to...
You mean Nashville? What do you mean by that?
No, like in the deep South. Like the school I went to was 50% black. My town's 50% black. Like, I go to other cities and it's like, oh, well, all your black people live here in this one little pocket, and all your... Including
Nashville.
Nashville's very, yes.
We are very segregated.
I don't consider Nashville to be it's the South for sure. I don't consider it to be the deep South.
Not like Mississippi or...
Right. So when I say the South, I mean the deep South. But Nashville is very, like, your black people live here in this one little part of town. Mm-hmm. And your Spanish people live here in this one little part.
Which is interesting because people think of Nashville as being very progressive, but...
It is.
When you're here, you're like, not so much.
it's progressive leaning for a southern town.
But the minute the door shuts, I've been in writers' rooms where people have said some things where I'm like, I'm sorry, what did you just say?
But my point is, so in the deep South, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, like everything is just about 50-50 across the board, black, white. Nobody else in the country, I feel like, really has deals with that. So the geographical region of the country that gets the worst, and rightfully so. I'm not taking up for the South at all. It definitely has its evils, but I just never saw it as a thing until I moved away, and I was treated like sort of inferior, and just because they heard my accent or whatever. And I'm sure they assumed oh, this dude's a racist and probably illiterate and uneducated. I don't know.
He definitely has sex with his own sister. Sorry, that's horrifying.
That's Alabama. That's not Louisiana. I'm joking.
Mississippi diss right there.
But so there's there's this thing you have to deal with that I think. It's easy for somebody from Des Moines, Iowa, to point fingers and say, well, all these people are racist in this entire region or this state. But it's just a little more complex than that. And a lot of problems we have are just a little bit more complex than that. And to a lot of people, it's just a very cut and dry, black and white, no pun intended. But the flag thing and the statues and all that, it's easy for an outsider to say look, this is just wrong and there's no other way around it. And to an extent they're right. I mean, they are right. But I think what they don't take into consideration is what we had to deal with growing up, and there are racial tensions that are still there. It's the South. We're all aware of our past and our history, and so those tensions are there, but we're sort of being forced to deal with them in real time. Whereas I feel like in some other places it's just a little more suppressed. And
racism is suppressed, you mean?
Yeah. Or a little more institutional. To me, like I was talking about, I go to another town and it's well, if all your black people live here and all your Spanish people live here, to me, that's racist. That's institutional racism. And that's the stuff that nobody wants to talk about because it's easier to just say, look at these racist Southerners.
Part of that certainly is socioeconomic, for sure, I think. But also part of that is being around those who look like you and feel like you and understand you. So it is a complex thing. The floods that came through Nashville, for example, disintegrated the integration and forced out, when they rebuilt Nashville with these grandiose places, in East Nashville,
right,
these big homes, that suddenly a lot of the poor, white, black, Latino, whatever, they got pushed out.
Or in the Gulf Coast when you're pushed out from hurricanes.
That's right.
And stuff like that.
Poor are always the first to be disenfranchised and shoved out, and it's just this.
Right. So
how did your family feel about, for example, since you said already that your politic is different than other members of your family. So let's take something like the flag, the Confederate flag, or a statue of a.
Well, I think the disconnect there is, so I was not raised, my friends were not raised to think that, hey, Dad, what's this flag mean? Or what's it stand for? Nobody says, well, it stands for racism, and and we're proud of that. Or nobody says, well, it stands for, hanging people and slave owning. I was always told, well, it just stands for being proud of where you're from. And as a kid, I was totally okay with that, because you do see, Southerners hold in high regards the things that there are to be proud of there. You know, like the food and the music and the arts and the literature and the sports.
Music and arts that come from Black people, by the way.
Well, like stolen from Black people, but down the line, like in the modern day South, you see Black and white people coming together.
No, I understand that
over those things.
But and again, your understanding of, for you, the flag, the Confederate flag, doesn't mean these things that maybe somebody who's a Black person.
Well, no, it does.
But you're a white person, and you were raised as a white person.
Exactly. So as a kid, that's acceptable. Yeah, I'm proud of where I'm from because you see that your whole life growing up. Like Southerners, like I said, they hold in high regard like the good. There's
a pride to the South.
Yeah,
sure.
there is a pride.
Southern pride. There it is.
Yeah, and you're a part of that growing up, but then you get older, and you start to see this doesn't necessarily mean what I was told it means. And I feel like if you get to the point in your life where somebody said, I feel like you can carry your whole life with you. The whole like, oh, this doesn't mean what everybody says it means. It means that you're proud of where you're from. But when you get to the point in your life and your own experience where you see what it truly means to other people and you don't denounce that, then you're wrong.
It's like voting.
It's complicated because I feel like I've had this discussion with a lot of people, and I've talked about this the other day with some buddies from California, and to them, they don't understand how you could ever just think that the Confederate flag was okay. To them, it's either right or wrong. It's very cut and dry, and that's it. But like what I was trying to explain to them is what I'm trying to say now. Like you're not necessarily brought up like hating Black people or you're not brought up told that's like a symbol of slavery or, but when you do start to see what it means to other people, that's when you should be like, okay, like it's wrong because this is what it means to other people. It doesn't matter. I don't care about symbol. Like, George Carlin said, I'll leave the symbols to the symbol-minded. And that's how I feel about that. And it's the same thing with the flag, the kneeling for the flag. How can you take this one flag and say, oh, you can't tell me what this means because this means one particular thing to me, and I don't care if it means any particular thing to somebody else. You can't say that and then take another flag and say, oh, this is what it represents, and you're disrespecting it across the board. Right. Like it's a total hypocrisy.
It's a very good point. The voting thing is when I vote, I'm not just voting based on my beliefs. So this is certainly a part of it, but I'm also voting based on how I think others should be treated. And
I vote based on injustices that I see.
Absolutely. Because it's not just me running amok on this planet. There's other people to consider. And I want to take women into consider. I want to take disenfranchised into consideration, the underdog, politics, fiscal responsibilities, all sort of war, healthcare, mental health care. There's a lot of stuff that is. I don't have children. I still want to, have a voice to protect those who do. And those children should be protected as well. There are certain things that just as a human being, look outside oneself.
For me, that's what brought me out of my my whole like just being apolitical. Just sort of this like I told you earlier. I came from DC and I said, you know what, I'm going to stay as far away from all this because what allowed me to justify that was I could say to myself, it doesn't really affect me anyway.
Dangerous words.
I know. And then it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I realized that those were dangerous words. And I realized, well, if none of this stuff affects me, then doesn't that place the responsibility on me to act out against injustices that I see, that don't necessarily affect me.
One of the most dangerous lies that is propagated is that your vote and your voice doesn't matter. And if you look, that they're pushing that rhetoric hard. And if your voice didn't matter and your vote didn't matter, then they wouldn't say a word because they wouldn't give a shit. But they do. They want to make you feel that way.
I used to think that there was like one small ruling class, the oligarchy, and everyone from Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump was in there, and then there was everybody else. And
that's pretty accurate.
And to an extent, like I still feel that way, but it allowed me to justify just sort of not giving a shit. Because like I said, it doesn't affect me. You know, how many people out there could say like, it doesn't really affect me that much?
This latest election shows how much it does. Single votes matter.
Yeah, totally. And so I got tired of just seeing. I just grew up and stopped thinking about just myself. You know, like that's all it is. Like you become an adult and you hopefully start to care for other people other than yourself.
Yeah. And
I think a lot of that comes just from like getting out of where you come from, and for me that's the South, and I love the South, and it's. You know, I still live in the South, and there's a lot of things to be proud of. And there's also a whole lot of things to be sort of ashamed of. And that's something that's nobody else has to deal with but me or other people who like grew up here in this, who there's like this whole, we're not all racist and illiterate and inbred, but God, we elect the stupidest fucking people, and then you see them on TV and you hear them on the radio, and it's like, well, how could you not think that? but there's not, and there's good people here, and there's like there's this whole sort of like New South movement that I'm kind of starting to see in places like Charleston and Savannah and Athens, Georgia, and New Orleans, and I don't know. There's like, I feel like there's enough disenfranchised, like decent Southern people that are all starting to come together, and I've really started to see that here within the past maybe maybe 10 years. Mm-hmm. But it is looking up, but it's one of those like one step forward, two step back things.
Well, I would say again too, just be out in the community to see the good of the world instead of being nose deep in social media. It's funny, when it was voting day, I wrote a thing on my Facebook about just what I just said about how I'm not just voting for me, I'm voting for humanity and for these different things that I believe in and for people who don't have a voice. And somebody posted, well, I'm voting too, and I vote red. And I said, great. Everyone should vote. I don't care where you're coming from, but everyone should vote. It's your right as a citizen of
People
this country.
died for years and years and years of all colors for that right. For
women just got the right, really. I mean, black people just got the right. For God's sakes, if that alone doesn't spur you to action, or the fact that in other countries people get killed for voting.
We're like 50 years removed from...
Not much, yeah.
From a time when...
It's crazy. And let's be honest, people still get strung up on trees in this modern day world. Or the modern day equivalent shot for no reason. And we could get into that.
I had the high school I went to, it was an all-white high school that was out in the country, and I think it was a year or two before I started going there, but somebody burned a cross like during halftime of their like homecoming game or whatever.
So you didn't always go to a integrated school, then you went to a segregated school as well?
I grew up going to schools that were like pretty much 50-50 black and white.
But this particular school? When
I was a sophomore in high school, my parents moved from the city like out towards the country. And then
country mouse, yes.
Then I transferred to this school.
Yeah.
And
the thing about country versus city as well, I had this conversation the other day with someone, and that, they made a very valid point, is that the people in the city, they see a lot of the progress. The people in the country don't. And so they feel disenfranchised. And so they get more set in this pinpoint of anger. Like, what does anybody do for me?
They feel disenfranchised, and they, that's the whole thing. Like, they feel, they view government as this evil entity, and in a lot of ways it is, but it's this whole, like, sort of fuck you, like, self-reliance, disenfranchised. Those are the people that Trump was able to sort of prey upon in the most recent election. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those people are people that used to belong to the Democratic Party. But, let's be honest, they were sort of just left out to dry by the Democrats. Yeah,
unfortunately, there are many states that probably should also be allowed to go east, west, north, south, because for California, for example, Southern California gets all the resource. Northern California has all the farmers. How are they supposed to survive when all the money is being dumped into the South? Because they need more policing and they need more water and all this stuff. So the north of California gets screwed. Same with, Oregon or Idaho or Washington State. Eastern Washington and Western Washington, you might as well be in a different state. They're completely different.
Louisiana is the same way.
Yeah, and they require different things, and they have different needs and different belief systems.
Right. I feel like for the people I grew up around that are very much like conservative, I feel like for most of them, and there are like still some religious like values voters, but I feel like for most of them, for them it all boils down to like the money.
It's always the money.
And the welfare thing, and they feel like, well, we work our asses off, 40 hours a week or whatever, and then
but there's a ton of white people on welfare. A ton.
Yeah. Big time.
a lot.
But they don't. I think that's their big. As far as the people I know, that would probably be their biggest.
But see, that's also ignorance. That's just an ignorant.
Well, they that's their biggest hang up, but also like me personally, I view our country and the world as we're only as strong as our weakest link. And so I get, it sucks to go to work and work your ass off all week and then have this percentage of money taken out to go to welfare. But like,
it's a tiny, tiny percent as well.
And does welfare need reforming? Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, there's way too much. I think it could be, like boiled down a lot nicer into maybe just.
I would love to see
a small handful of.
Well, I would like to see that money used to help put people back on their feet. We have a problem in general.
Well, I don't mean the money. I just mean like the sort of all the different government like entities that are all sort of fall under the same umbrella as.
Welfare is such a tiny. Tiny.
But yeah, I
honestly would, get rid of one bomb of the gajillions of bombs we have in our war chest, and you'd be fine.
People don't realize like the money's there. That's a big problem. Is the money's there like. You want free healthcare. The money's there. Mm-hmm. The money's there. It's just being spent on dumb shit.
Yeah.
But do you want to live in poverty or do you not? Do you want the chances of your house and your car being broken into to be lessened? Like, you have to start investing into those sort of things, and that's what it is.
Well, this country as a whole is not great at investing in itself, and we've seen a systematic decline, and it's not political based, it's financial based, because if you look at it, again, it's that thing where I don't care which side of the political aisle you're on, there has been a systematic destroying of this country on so many levels.
Yeah. Well, because there's so...
Because it keeps the people in power more powerful. And the poorer we get, the dumber we get. And by dumb, I mean educated. I mean,
that's why I still sort of identify with like fiscal conservatives.
Yeah, I understand that.
But nobody... But they're not truly fiscally conservative, the people that say they are. But yeah, that's the problem. Like, the money's there. Like, we have the money for education and the money for healthcare, the money for infrastructure, but it's just being spent on so much dumb shit, like overthrowing foreign governments.
Well, and it's like you mentioned as well, is that they sneak things into bills here and there that they know will or won't get passed.
Yes.
All that's... I swear to God, I learned more about the way the government works watching 7 seasons of The West Wing than I did in my 9th grade civics course. Isn't that sad? But it's true, because it put questions in my head, and then I went and researched things, and I read the Constitution for real, and you know what I mean? Like, I really got into it, and I thought, is that true?
You just you either reach the point in your life or you don't, to where you start to just sort of like research things on your own, or especially things that you believe in.
Well, and I've been wrong so much, and it's fine. It's okay to be wrong. I
would rather be wrong than not know.
I'd rather be wrong and learn what the truth is than blindly go along.
Right.
For sure.
Totally. And I think a lot of people would just rather be right. It's too scary to like potentially be wrong. When you have all this evidence, all these other fucking spagooter eaters on liking your posts on Facebook, you've got all this other evidence that you're right, and you don't have to research it. It's way scarier to find out if you're legitimately right or not, for most people. I mean, like, for me, all that, like, I learned all that in journalism school. I mean, most people should, like, if you're this adamant about your worldview, and you're willing to like just pound it into all these different people on Facebook or whatever, because they're just these like video game bosses that you're just trying to like defeat, wouldn't you want to know like more about the subject you're talking about? Most people wouldn't.
If you believe something so true, if you have that much faith, then go read the people that don't believe it. The people that have completely the opposite thought patterns and belief systems, and really read it and understand where they're coming from. And it may change the way you think, or it may not. Just hear what the other person has to say instead of just arguing it for the sake of the argument.
Right. Use critical thinking.
Because what could go wrong? Well, maybe you believe what they say. Well, that's okay too.
The newest pope?
Francis? No, that was the last one. Who is the new guy?
Is it Francis?
I think it's Francis. Wait, who's the super creepy one? The last pope gave me the creeps.
They're all like kind of borderline super creepy.
Sorry, Catholics. I'd have to look it up.
But
we'll just say the new pope.
But so like South Louisiana is very Catholic. My mom is from like as far South Louisiana as you can possibly get, like very Cajun, very Catholic. And like this newest pope said, he said hell didn't exist.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And
I want to say it's Francis, isn't it Francis?
I think it might be Francis, and he might have like went back to clarify it, like past what I read, but I read about it, and I started trying to talk about it to like my mom and my grandparents, and they're like, "Oh no, he doesn't count. He's like a liberal pope."
That's amazing.
The fucking pope.
Let's see here.
Have you ever seen Hell House, like the documentary? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like these productions.
Oh, Francis. Nailed it.
It is Francis.
Yeah. I couldn't remember because I was trying to remember the last guy. He was
I think John Paul something was
the creepy one.
Maybe
one of them was
guy.
Kind of freaked me out. The German one gave me the Willy Me Timbers, and then
a little creepy.
Well, I suppose I don't know. Francis is I like his vibe.
He's kind of a rock star.
He's not perfect either. He's got his own. I mean, everything comes with its own baggage. But that moment I thought was so beautiful.
That is beautiful. Yeah.
What is Hell House?
Oh,
you mean the series on Netflix?
No, it was a documentary, but it's like
The Haunting of Hell House.
No, that's
okay.
something different. Which I am watching, by the way. We can talk about that later. But there's Southern Baptists, and I think probably like Pentecostals, and I'm sure it goes beyond them, but they put on these productions. And I went to one as a kid.
Yes,
but there's a documentary about a big one called Hell House where they bring the kids in, and it's basically like a haunted house, but to scare you into like
abstinence,
giving your soul to the Lord or whatever.
They have like the HIV room, and they have like the incest room, and the like if you listen to rock music room and all
the rock music room. I had to go to one of those like when I was a kid. I was sent to one.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was called Heaven's Gate, Hell's Flame. And they did it every year, and it was like, me and my brother were laughing about it because we just went to a haunted house, this like Nashville Nightmares or whatever, and it's like this big maze, and they just give you a glow stick, and that's all you have, and so you just walk around, and it's pitch dark, and there's people like grabbing your ankles and stuff.
Okay.
But anyway, so I haven't thought about this in years until we went to this haunted house, but it was basically like a haunted house for good Christians, and it was in the church, like in the, you had like a tour guide, and they would take you in groups, and they would take you around, and you would see these different scenarios. And one was like, I vaguely remember it, but one was like the alcoholic widow who drank herself to death. And another one was like the construction worker who wasn't saved, but like he fell off the scaffold and died at work. And just like different scenarios like that of people who, it was all deaths. And it was people who like were saved or who weren't saved. And so then you go and you see, and you're like a kid, like elementary school, enough to like be really scared. And they're taking you to these different scenarios, and it's just these people dying, like these miserable people, like drinking themselves to death, or like the drug addict. And so then they take you to, you come out into like the church, and you're at the Golden Gates, and St. Peter or whoever it is that's there, like checking the guest list, he's there. And so all these characters from these scenarios that you saw, they come up to the gate, and he's going down the list, and he's like, "What's your name?" "Nope, not on the list." And then these demons run out and like grab the people, and they drag them to hell. And then they take you to like a hell scenario, and it's like your Sunday school teacher like dressed up like the South Park devil, with like with like a one of those voice things, and it's like, ha ha ha, all these people are burning in hell, and because they didn't give their souls to Jesus Christ or whatever. So then they take you to the next room. They're like, "All right, who wants to sign up?" And you're like, "Me. I don't want to have to do that." Like you're a young kid, and like all your friends are doing it, and it's like, this is kind of weird, but okay, whatever.
Same reason we do the Pledge of Allegiance every day.
And so then they sign you up, and then so that Sunday it's like it's a big photo op for the Sunday service, so they can bring all these kids down the aisle and dunk them in the water and stuff. But but yeah, I went to that.
It's like child abuse. Seriously.
Kind of.
Oh my God. There's that joke about the guy dies and goes to hell, and Satan's like, "All right, welcome to hell. You have to pick a room that you're going to be in for all eternity." And the guy's like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, take a look in door number 1. And the guy leans in, and it's like people getting their flesh ripped from their bodies, and there's flames, and they're being poked with sticks, all this stuff. And the guy's like, "Oh my God, that's horrific." And he's like, I don't want that room. I mean, so it's like, check out door number 2. And the guy looks in door number 2, and it's, I don't know, Night Ranger playing on 24/7, and he's getting, people are getting just eviscerated, and like their bowels are in their hands, and they're sobbing, and whatever it is.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, that looks terrible." And Satan's like, "Look in door number 3," and so the guy looks in door number 3, and it's a bunch of people standing around waist deep in shit, and they're drinking coffee. and just sort of chatting amongst themselves. And the guy's like, oh, it's not so bad. And he's like, Satan, I'll do door number 3. And he's like, all right, get in there. And he walks in there. And then Satan yells, all right, everybody, coffee break's over. Back on your head. Anyway,
that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a dumb joke, but it made me laugh.
I love dumb jokes.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, like the Hell House thing is a real thing, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Though they inject a little tiny bit of like political ideology into. Oh yeah,
of course.
Into these like whatever they are, like Sunday school class or these. I don't know. Is it a play? Like I don't know.
It's a morality play of sorts, I suppose. A
morality play, but it is very like, and I don't know if that's specifically Southern, but like
I doubt it. I'm sure it's everywhere.
But it's definitely a thing. It's like a recruitment pool.
I'd love to get somebody from Westboro Church.
I think that's all just like fake.
You do?
I do, yeah. I don't.
Those people are pretty.
I think they know exactly what they're doing, and I think it's like a money thing.
Oh, you mean that the leaders of it? I don't know. I mean, if anybody out there is a Westboro person, I'd love to have you.
I could be wrong.
I'm just so curious, just because it's just so, to me, over the top, and there was an interview that I saw once of a daughter of one of the leaders, and she's, they believe what they're saying, the followers at least.
Right.
Go to any religion, and perhaps maybe the leaders aren't so much.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. It always just seemed very like, sort of like hokey and fake to me.
I don't know.
But maybe not.
Who knows?
Because they were always out on Bourbon Street in New Orleans.
A good place for them, I suppose.
Always.
If you hate, that's a good place to be.
Fags, masturbators, everyone basically going to hell.
All their
That's what
signs.
Their signs. Yeah. They were there. I just thought it was kind of like a joke.
Yeah. How does your family feel about homosexuality?
They think it's a sin.
Yeah. How do you feel about it?
I feel like it's perfectly natural. I mean, if
that's a great response.
If you can be
for the people who are gay, it's fine, right?
If you can be, if God will allow one of his children to be born with like both penises and vaginas, then how far of a stretch is it that somebody could be born gay?
Right.
I mean, that's ridiculous to me. But I guess it, to some people it's not. Like,
right. Some people it's very serious.
Yeah, my parents think that it's it's a sin, and they're not like, they're not like. I mean, I guess they're homophobic, but they're not like outspoken, like, oh, these, whatever. It's not really like that. I just think they think that it's wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that they would, I think that if their all white Southern Baptist church congregation were to have a gay couple all of a sudden like join them on a Sunday morning service, I don't think anybody would say anything to them.
To their face.
Yeah, sure, like afterwards. But I don't think they would be like turned away.
Yeah. And
I don't think they would be in harm's way or anything like that.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, and that's like, we're just like, I don't know how many years removed from where that would not be
a big deal. We're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there. Or maybe we're not. I don't know. I'd like to think we're getting there. But that's just me.
Yeah.
I'm guessing there's people listening to this show that are not into the idea of two same-sex
right.
people.
And I get it. I mean, I don't, but...
I don't either. I mean, I get that people believe that and it's important to them and all that. I understand where they're coming from, but it's doesn't.
Right. I just think there's if your reasoning behind it is because it's it's a threat to the sanctity of marriage, there's a lot more going on you should be concerned about that's threatening to the sanctity of marriage than a dude and a dude, or a girl and a girl, or whatever. Wanting to have the same rights and be treated equal as everybody else.
Wow, we've really covered the gamut.
the spectrum.
And I've done a call out. So seriously, anybody who falls into any of these categories that I've talked about, please reach out to me, Susan at heyhumanpodcast.com. Send me your hate mail, but please come to the show. I'm okay with being hated and disagreed with. It's much more fun.
You should be hated to some extent,
just
or
to
you're not doing it right.
But just to have the conversation, it would be fascinating. I think I'm not out to. My wish and my will, of course, I would love for everyone to just be like, whatever you do in your life is fine, and it doesn't concern me. But I know the reality isn't that.
Yeah, if you're not hurting anybody else, everybody deserves to be treated as equal. And if you're not hurting anybody else, then why should it bother you what somebody else is doing? Life would just be a lot more
chill,
easy peasy.
Then the AI wouldn't have to take us over.
Yeah, which they will eventually anyway. To explore and find those things out for yourself.
To boldly go where no one has gone before. In the wise
and maybe I'm wrong, but if I'm wrong, I went to the Heaven's Gate hell flame and I gave my life to the Lord, so I'll be good.
So where are you headed? What's your plan? What's your 5-year plan here at this company? Where do you see yourself in the company?
Well, I'm about to get back in the studio and record what will actually be my debut full-length solo record.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Because I've done some stuff like under another band name, and I've done some stuff under like Chris Watts Band. But as far as just under the name Chris Watts, this will be like my first full-length solo record, and stay on the road. I tour solo a lot. I've been predominantly just touring solo for the past couple of years now, and doing just a lot of like songwriter venues and like listening rooms and stuff like that. But I think it's time to get a band back out on the road.
Time to get the band back together.
Yeah, but no, I feel like I've done everything I'm going to do just driving around the country on my own.
Yeah.
So
good way to save money too.
Yeah, but it's also like it's sort of the path of least resistance, So I've developed a comfort zone doing that, and I feel like now it's time. If I want to sort of take things to the next level, I guess it's time to do something a little bit different, and part of that will be like bringing a full band out and seeing how that goes.
So how can people find you out there in the world wide webs?
You can find me on my website is www.
You probably don't have to say that part.
http://www. I'm on all the things, Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah, and I put links on Hey Human Podcast.
Yeah, and that's all Chris Watts Band. And I'm also on iTunes and Spotify and all that stuff. So yeah.
Cool. Well, Chris, thank you. Chris Watts.
Thank you
for being on the show. And that was a really interesting conversation. I appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening. Please take a moment and rate and review Hey Human on iTunes. It's super helpful, and I really appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.